Hi, everyone, and welcome to this special episode of the Passive House Podcast, recorded in Tarrytown, New York at the PhiusCon 2021 Passive House Conference. Before we get started, I want to thank Phius for putting on the conference and for coordinating with us on these interviews, as well as NYSERDA for serving as conference partner with Phius and community partner with us here at the Passive House Accelerator. Thank you, too, to ROCKWOOL North America. Their generous support underwrote all of these interviews as well as our coverage of the conference. With that, please enjoy my interview with Todd Kimmel of ROCKWOOL North America. All right, welcome. I'm here with Todd Kimmel of ROCKWOOL North America, and I just spoke with your colleague, Robert Blunt, and I'm really looking forward to having a chance to chat with you as well. Thank you for ROCKWOOL's support of Passive House Accelerator and our presence here and doing these interviews. And how's the conference so far for you?
It's been great, yeah, and thanks for helping to support and promote these programs and everything that you guys do at the Accelerator. The event's been great. I mean, we've been on a hiatus, right, for going on 2 years. So it's good to be kind of back and live and in action and to be in like a crowded room with passive house enthusiasts, building science professionals, and really just motivated people who are passionate about passive house and addressing climate change and actually putting this to practice, right? So like, it's heartening to kind of just be amongst this group and kind of see everything accelerate, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a nice kind of recharge, I think, for all of us as well. Yeah. And you've been in this world for a while, yeah, Todd? I mean,
in the passive house world, in the building enclosure world for a while. So over 20 years, which is kind of crazy. But in the passive house world, since roughly 2009 or so, we started to.
That's a while. I mean.
Yeah, I was hosting passive house programs at the Trespa Design Center in Soho.
Cool.
And that's kind of how I got introduced to it all.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and then working for a facade cladding company, it made a lot of sense to kind of pursue getting my CPhD, which I did, in 2012, 2013. So. Been involved from the cladding end, and then I was in the membrane world with Dorkin for a few years, and now with ROCKWOOL for 3.5 years. So cladding, air barriers, thermal insulation, passive house. It's been kind of a nice trajectory.
Yeah, definitely. Like touching some really important elements of the envelope for sure. Yeah. And your work at ROCKWOOL is focused in the New York region, yes?
Predominantly, I focus doing most of my day-to-day supporting design professionals, consultants, architects, contractors on the use and implementation of ROCKWOOL products on any scale building, not just passive house, but that's my passion. And there's a lot of passive house projects going on in New York City, so that's great. Yeah.
Maybe we can explore a couple of those. Like, what are some of the exemplary projects that you're involved with?
Yeah, I mean, Handel Architects is really taking a lead on a lot of their large commercial passive house buildings. So, a focus there. I mean, Datner Architects has done a tremendous job. Architectonica, ZH Architects, all these firms are in the kind of realm of doing high-rise passive house buildings in New York City. And so, I mean, the benefit, especially in New York City with large buildings, kind of the gravitation towards non-combustible construction, which is a big part of this, which kind of gravitates people to ROCKWOOL as a solution for thermal insulation, continuous insulation. So it's kind of a nice partnership there. And so, people start by kind of reaching out to us to kind of address non-combustibility. But then they also start to see the benefits, beyond that when it comes to vapor permeance, understanding as we're building passive house airtight buildings, that the drying capacity of our walls historically was pretty, from leaky buildings was easy. Buildings would get wet, you'd put the heat on, dry the envelopes out. But now we have to rely on vapor diffusion. We have to rely on kind of natural drying. And so, being able to speak to that and kind of support these design teams and recognizing those values beyond just the fire performance aspects is a big part of what I do.
Yeah, well, And for a passive house architect to have the chance to interact with someone who understands the building science and really gets it would be, I think, really powerful, I would imagine.
100%, yeah. And a lot of people are just getting used to rain screen as well. So it's like adapting the rain screen techniques to these buildings and understanding that and kind of the benefits there is a big part of it. Yeah.
So back in 2009, when you were getting introduced to Passive House, did you imagine, were you all in New York and Soho already thinking about big passive house buildings? Did that seem like a real possibility at that time?
No, in fact, I would say that, I was more focused. So at that time, I was serving as the technical director for Trespa. And it was much more about, for me at least, it was about design aesthetics, proper rain screen performance, moisture management. It wasn't necessarily tackling high performance building envelopes and reducing carbon emissions or anything of that nature. Right. And maybe it was me in my own little world. Like I just hadn't been kind of, the passive house world had not been visible to me until we started hosting programs and realizing, the contribution that panelized systems can have on, improving the built environment and like opening up that kind of door to me was very unique. So just kind of, and understanding that like there's architects and building professionals out there that are starting to do this work, and just the motivation, the grassroots kind of nature and the energy that a lot of these professionals had was intoxicating. So it was just like, all right, and I can contribute to this and I can help support it. I need to learn more. And so that's kind of where it started for me.
I also was introduced to Passive House in 2009, and I can totally relate to that feeling of being intoxicated by that energy and also just the combination of this passion and this mission and the science behind it. Just like how also I think the geekiness of it was something that it was appealing. But I have to say that I did not expect to see the kinds of big buildings we're seeing as quickly. I mean, it's been in some ways it's been a long time coming, but in other ways it's happened pretty quickly, and it just there's I don't know. Maybe it's some American thing about big things, but there's a different level of legitimacy that Passive House has now. When there are these, I mean, you just listed off these practitioners who are doing all these really, really notable buildings in New York, and Boston and everywhere, Yeah.
Well, no, and that's what's part of the excitement these days, right? It's like, I've had an opportunity to be part of these projects in New York. And as, one of the let's say 4 or 5 people that are on the ROCKWOOL team that are kind of involved in the Passive House community, I get looped into presenting in other regions of the country, and to other regions that are not familiar with Passive House, or are, but don't understand the size and scale with which it can be done and accomplished. And like, it's always, it's great to kind of get those reactions after I either present a program on Passive House or high performance building, and people see these projects that are being done and are just amazed, right? Like not realizing that you could go beyond a house, and so, it's just also being kind of at the forefront and showcasing the possibilities in the broader built environment that's great. Yeah.
So what's the next frontier you think for ROCKWOOL and Passive House, like in terms of building typology or geography, or what do you see?
I think a retrofit is like the easy. Yeah. I mean, it has to be, right? So I think that is a mantra of ROCKWOOL, right? As far as trying to address retrofit in the built environment, and understanding that, the role built existing buildings play in kind of the carbon emissions of our world. And, we're not addressing the big issue unless we're addressing existing buildings. Yeah. And so, we've had the benefit of being involved on some kind of unique projects that are, incorporating our products, whether or not it's overclad retrofit solutions on existing large buildings, looking at multifamily, affordable housing buildings that were built 30, 40 years ago that are falling apart, and looking at applying EFIS solutions with stone wool insulation with ROCKWOOL, or, in New York City, where there's so many different building typologies, including historic masonry buildings, where you're not going to be putting insulation on the outside of these buildings. You have to do it on the inside, which really takes, focus on building science and understanding kind of moisture condensation, the durability of enclosures, and how to incorporate proper materials on the inside, vapor control layers, smart vapor control layers integrated with stone wool, all of that kind of science is really critical for understanding. Because, if you're going to go to the kind of the effort of retrofitting a building from an energy perspective, you don't want to have to do it again afterwards, right? You need to do it right, and you don't want to ruin, the existing building in the process. So there's proper techniques that need to be addressed, and it's been exciting to be part of ROCKWOOL and kind of developing those solutions and looking for new innovative products to address that.
And are you finding yourself actually doing some hygrothermal analysis, or are you? I imagine it's probably a mix, right? There probably on a lot of projects, there's an independent consultant who is doing a hygrothermal analysis that you're supporting, or how does that play out for you?
Yeah, I think, what's been awesome for me, at least at ROCKWOOL, is having a tremendous amount of support through the corporate headquarters and the recognition that, insulation is more than just a nominal R value, and that, vapor permeance matters. Understanding how products are being applied for efficiency in terms of getting higher effective R values is really critical. And so, I've been able to leverage our team's building science services. So we actually do get involved on a lot of projects by offering complementary building science support with regards to running WFI assessments, running hygrothermal analysis, doing, thermal bridge modeling, doing effective R value calculations. And so we offer that to design teams, to contractors that might be proposing new cladding systems. But, to your point, I think a lot of project teams are already kind of leveraging consultants to do that work. So, where we come in to benefit, is on those projects that don't have the means to do that, and to provide that support, or to act very nimbly and get things done pretty quickly, just to kind of do even checks and balances with a lot of this. And so we've seen a huge uptick in the use of that service, particularly in New York, particularly in Boston, DC, in these areas that are starting to really see an uptick of passive house and are dealing with more challenging climates, right? Dual climates, understanding where dew point is occurring when you're adding this insulation and you're creating this, airtight system that might not dry as easily as historically. So it's all part of the picture, and, yeah, it's neat to be kind of just part of those conversations.
Yeah, no, it seems like that would be really fun, given that given your CPhD background and grounding in building science, to be able to be bringing that to the an active analysis of the envelopes that you are impacting and improving with ROCKWOOL. I imagine that would be pretty satisfying.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's exciting. So, and ROCKWOOL's, been great. So they've also supported me, not to speak so much about myself, but, I have a history with rain screens.
It is an interview with you, so that's kind of the purpose. just to point that out, Todd.
So, well, what's been exciting is that, so I started with Trespa, which is a high pressure laminate rain screen panel, and developing systems for them that were not necessarily energy efficiency focused at the time, right? And we've seen this transgression to, thermally broken clip systems and, even high compressive strength insulation like ROCKWOOL, where all you have to do is screw through the insulation to reduce thermal bridging down to point bridges, as opposed to having, Z-girts or linear thermal bridges. And so there's a lot of benefit there. There's a lot of benefit within rain screen for promotion of convection and drying within assemblies. And so one of the things that I've been personally very proud of is we've just developed a new industry association called RAINA, which is the Rain Screen Association in North America, which started through the pandemic, but has...
That's cool.
Yeah.
One of those pandemic silver linings, right? Probably.
Yeah. So we've had, just through my network and my history, we've got a lot of people on board with it, right? So it's not a manufacturers association. It's, it is manufacturers of claddings, membranes, insulation, clip systems, but it's also design professionals, consultants, architects, contractors, unions, just on best practice around rain screen, because a lot of people have different perceptions of what that is and how it's applied. And so, my hope and my goal, we haven't gotten to the sustainability committee yet. We haven't developed that yet, but that is like kind of tying these worlds together of high performance, low energy, passive house, building science, effective overclad solutions, I guess tying it again into the retrofit kind of realm of rain screen. So there's like a pathway there for me that's like, in hopefully 5 years or less that we're all going to come together as a big industry group to really address the climate needs and, more robust buildings that
right. Some
are
key resilience,
durable and resilient, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know the full pathway there yet, but it's like nice to be on that trajectory, and ROCKWOOL's been very supportive of all that.
Yeah, that sounds like really good work. Yeah. Well, Todd, this is really great. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we close up?
No, I guess just thank you to the Accelerator for everything that you guys do, all the programming that you do. I think what I found and I wish I'm involved in more of them, but it's just bringing this whole community of passive house enthusiasts together. Everyone's so passionate, and it's hard, in a lot of industries to kind of find out how your day to day is really connecting to a better world for our children, for our neighbors, and so this is just a great thing to latch onto and to kind of know that there's a whole community of people and to kind of make you feel like what you're doing day to day is really making a difference in the grand scheme of things. So I can appreciate, the Accelerator's ability to kind of bring those people together and kind of push that passion forward. So,
thank you. I mean, it's talking about it, intoxicating. It's great. It's really great and fun work. So I appreciate it. And thanks again for supporting that effort.
Thank you.
Yeah, great.
Awesome.
Thanks, Todd.